Miami was no longer just a sleepy banana port. It was becoming the cruise capital of the world, and its huge cargo terminal was making it one of America's busiest transatlantic harbors. In the 1960s, the Eagle Steamship Agency decided to take advantage of the opportunities opened up by Dodge Island. It was a family business, handling cargo and carrying out ship repairs.
When she's finished, we need to start loading the lumber.
It was run by Joey Teitelbaum. His family had been in shipping in Miami for generations. It was a port with no history of mob activity.
All this is all taken care of? All right, I'm gonna walk around here just to make sure you get it all done, all right? Hey, Jack! Make sure all those containers from Majestic Lines, the ones that are sealed, are put into...
Business boomed for Joey until he was visited by labor racketeers who told him they were starting a new union for cargo checkers. The men were George Barone, expelled from the New York docks for running a crooked union; Bill Boyle, another mobster from New York; and the Longshoremen's leader, Fred Field, who told the Teitelbaum family their cargo checkers would have to join the new union.
My father asked Freddie Fields, "What checkers union are you talking about?" He said, "The new one that we just formed. And you people will sign a checkers contract." We told him, "No, we won't." And Freddie Fields said, "Listen, you," pointing to me, "is there some place we could talk? I understand you're a bright little boy." I told him, "Sure, let's go fishing." He said, "Okay." On this fishing trip, Benny Astorino told me that Freddie and his group were here to stay. The Checkers Union was in Miami. It was a way of life. This was a new port that was opening. Barone was the president. I could become associated with Freddie, and he could give me a lot of business. He wants to be my partner, but I'll have to put up $3,000 to show my good faith. I told him I couldn't make that commitment. I had to check with my father and my uncle. Both my father and my uncle said no, and we adamantly refused to sign that checkers contract. It was right afterwards that Freddie Fields called me on a telephone and said, "Are you ready to sign, or do I have to break your balls?" I told him I wasn't signing. When I got home that evening, my wife was waiting for me outside, really upset. And I asked her, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Someone called me and said that we were a nice family. I was a nice lady. He wouldn't want to see our daughter have an accident on the way home from school. Sign the contract." My wife told me, "Joe, sign the contract." And we signed a union contract.
The Teitelbaum's problems were only beginning, for the Genovese crime family of New York had realized Miami was the port of the future. Using Barone, Boyle, and Field as their frontmen, they set out to extort money from the shipping companies on Dodge Island. They did it through their new checkers union.
We didn't even know who the checkers were. We had never met these so-called checkers. And then a whole group came down from New York, all of Barone's boys. And each company had to hire a head checker. In the warehouse, you had to have 2 of his union checkers. On the trucks, you had to have 2 checkers. Before, where we had 1 man working, we had 5 and 6 men working. And they weren't even there half the time. Then they started ghosting. And ghosting means you have a guy on the payroll, but he's never there. And we didn't even know who half these people were. But we were told every week, you make a check out to his name. And we did.
Barone was typical of the mob that had moved in on Miami. He had a shocking record for violence and extortion, but on Dodge Island there was no waterfront commission to stand in the mob's way.
They had become so powerful in their own right that they controlled a pencil or a toothpick that was delivered to the dock. If you didn't pay, the longshoremen wouldn't load it. They wouldn't even allow your truck on the dock. They controlled the laundries, they controlled the vendors. You had to use their people in container repairs. Whether a container needed a repair or not, you had to have it repaired. They controlled every checker. Theft was rampant. You could not accuse a man of stealing. If you did, everybody walked off the dock. Thievery became a way of life on the waterfront. Their control was so enormous that they would pick up the telephone and call a local president in Mobile and say, Joey Teitelbaum has a ship going into Mobile. You're not to unload it. No labor would show up. Everyone who moved on a dock worked for them. This was the control they had from Searsport, Maine to Galveston, Texas. Every port in the east coast of the United States and the Gulf.
It took 6 years before the rackets on Dodge Island came to the notice of the FBI and Florida's own investigators. From their headquarters in Miami, agents, detectives, and lawyers began to build up a case.
In 1973, a combined federal, state, and local task force was formed to look into organized crime's influence into the transportation industry, and specifically into the shipping industry. What we found was that a number of people, specifically George Barone, Fred Fields, and others, who had been banned from the docks in New York for corruption and organized criminal activity, were in our community. And what we needed was someone who had direct inside information as to how the payoffs were taking place, how the corruption was taking place, and exactly how organized crime had infiltrated the union. Joey Teitelbaum was such a person. And we were successful in making a criminal case against Mr. Teitelbaum. At the conclusion of that criminal case, he agreed to cooperate with us, and he did so.
Joey had to cooperate. The criminal case brought against him was conspiracy to murder. It involved a business partner who had stolen money, food, and medical supplies that Joey was sending to a charity in Latin America. In a fit of outrage, Joey hired a hitman to kill him.
Get your goddamn hand on it and land that box.
The hitman was an FBI informer who exposed Joey's plans.
About that time, I got in a little trouble. I'd taken out a contract on somebody in South America. I got arrested.
Come out in the rough.
Police came to me. Said to me, we don't want you. We want these guys on Dodge Island. But we've got you by the ass. And how do you want to play this game? I said, okay, let's deal. They told me what they wanted. They wanted in on Dodge Island. And I told them, I walk from the other one. They said, it's a deal. So a deal was made. And they said, how far can you take us? And I said, how far do you want to go? They said, all the way to the top. I told them, hang on for the ride.
As part of this deal, the FBI planted 3 undercover men in Teitelbaum's shipping company. The FBI agents saw at first hand the payoffs the mobsters were demanding from Joey. The racketeers were now so powerful that they could dictate who did business with whom on the waterfront.
George Barone came to see me with Bill Boyle, and they told me, you want the Zim contract? I told him, yes. It's cost you $15,000 up front. In addition to the $15,000, you have to pay us 50 cents a ton on the loose cargo, $12 a box, and 1% of your revenue. I told him, that's a heavy price. He said, that's it. I told him, okay, let me think about it. I got in contact with this FBI agent who I was working with, told him I wasn't going to pay this money. And he said, pay it. We'll front it.
The FBI gave Joey the money to make the payoffs. They also hid a microphone on his body to record each transaction. Joey made one payoff without any problems. The next nearly cost him his life.
A week or so later, I went to make another payoff. And during the time of making this payoff, the FBI agent who strapped the recorder onto my thigh didn't tie it on fast enough. It fell down. And they said, what's this? I said, oh my God, my portable pacemaker. So I took the money out of my pocket and gave it to him and says, you count the money. I've got to go to the doctor, get my pacemaker checked. And I ran out.
I thought that Joey Teitelbaum's life was in danger at the time. There's no doubt that had they known or suspected that it was in fact an electronic listening device, that they would have probably taken some violent action against Mr. Teitelbaum at the time. Joey had recently suffered a heart attack, and he told him that his pacemaker had fallen out. And I guess they were perhaps the most gullible people I ever met, because they must have believed him.
The FBI told me we had to have confirmation of this payoff. So I went back to see Bill Boyle the next day with the tape recorder and said, "Did you get $1,500? And he shook his head, "Yeah." And I said, "Listen, do I speak English or don't I, goddammit? Did you get the fucking $1,500? And he said, "I got the $1,500. And I said, "Thank you very much." That was the confirmation we needed.
Teitelbaum's evidence cracked open the entire waterfront conspiracy. The FBI rounded up more than 20 mobsters and corrupt businessmen involved in extortion, embezzlement, and bribery. They were all convicted. Among them, George Barone, the overlord of extortion in America's southern ports, jailed for 15 years. Bill Boyle, who dictated how dozens of shipping lines did business, jailed for 12 years. And the union's top national organizer, Fred Field, jailed for 6 years. The evidence proved all three were frontmen for the Genovese crime family. The Miami convictions were followed by 10 more racketeers being convicted in New York. It was the most successful case ever made against organized crime. But on Joey's dock, bodyguards with concealed weapons have had to protect the FBI's star witness ever since his role as an informer was revealed. The government wanted him to leave Miami and live under a new identity. He refused. The Mafia still wants to kill him.
We were required to provide 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day protection for Mr. Teitelbaum and his family, which included parking marked police vehicles at his home, following his children, following his wife, taking him to his office and to his business, until such time as the federal government was able to bring in United States Marshals to take over this particular procedure. I do know that there have been documented threats, and in fact documented attempts to take his life. He still has 24-hour protection.
Make sure you take it.
Today, Joey's shipping company is booming again. He's determined to stay in Miami and run his business, whatever the risk to his life.
Together and everything? All right.
I run that dock of mine with an iron hand. That's my dock. No gangsters are going to run it for me. I run it myself. Win, lose, or draw. Gangsters tried to get on my dock since I formed it. I'm not ashamed to tell you, I ran them off with a pistol. If they ever come to my dock, they better come looking to kill me, because I'll kill them first.